I'm Sean Munro. I've been running Game Master's Table for, I guess, about 3 months now, which is a cooperative storytelling game for kids in an after-school format. And we're bringing in kids who sit somewhere between the creativity of the art classes, between the sort of the production side of band or theater. We're bringing in kids who are looking to share their own stories, to tell their own stories, and it's all about giving them agency as well as teaching them about social narratives and sort of how they can shape their own world. So primarily we use really small narrative games. So the classic games of like big numbers, ACs, all those things, we skip those early on in the program especially. And we go with ones that are really narrative. One of them is set in essentially scouts in a fantasy world. The other one is a steampunk, space opera. They're familiar settings to kids with characters that feel iconic and exciting. And it's about what we can do with those characters in that setting, as opposed to what mathematical outcomes we can achieve. I started role-playing games when I was at an overnight job. I had about 12 hours every night of sitting by a charity phone line, waiting for people to call in. So when 4th edition came out and I was finished that job, I started dungeon mastering in my own apartment. And after several years of playing the classic Dungeons and Dragons type games, I started looking at what other kinds of stories we could tell. So we started looking into other types of games, other narratives that games can tell us. And at the same time, I was looking into sort of the social narratives that build the world that we live in, ones that tell us that this ideology is good and that way of living doesn't make sense for us. So over the next year, as we discovered games that could tell stories about people who lived on the outside of society, or stories about people who essentially had minimum wage adventuring jobs, or stories that were about people rediscovering themselves inside a role-playing environment. And Sue was talking about how kids develop in play-based learning, which is something that the Ontario curriculum is only now starting to look at. Once we started discovering that kids were not only picking up the social agencies and the social narratives that we were really excited about, they were also coming away with just some of the language that we add in through character design of when a kid says, well, what's the best character? Coming up with that language that there is no subjective best, that your goal can be very fluid, that thing we do when we know how to beat a math test or win at a magic tournament is it's the most points or it's the highest score. Once you get into the real world, there isn't that clear-cut win condition. That agency to say, I can control the world around me. If a kid walks away with a sense of that, even just if they think, I can just do this in games, they'll start to create that confidence to bring that out into the real world as well. The ages we work with vary quite a bit. The youngest that we've engaged with so far is 7. The oldest is 14, which is huge in development for their spatial awareness, for giving them descriptors and seeing what they do with it, for how much you can really show them in the world, how much questions you have to ask to get their creativity going. The groups we have right now sit around like 9 and 13. And the 9-year-olds are able to just decide anything they want. They're really experimental with deciding what they see, where they are, where they go. The 13-year-olds are much more rigid. They have a much more, there's much more of a power structure within their group. Aside from the really exciting part of hearing kids run out the door yelling, I want to do what you do when I grow up. The really exciting part is when I see them interacting with new kids who have joined the program and seeing the big differences of sitting down with a couple kids that have been playing with me for a while and having someone new come in that asks that same classic question. Okay, I want to kill everything that I see in this game because that's what games are about, right? And having the other kid say, well, there's no subjective best way to do it, and you probably don't want to just do that. The world has consequences. And they start teaching other kids the same lessons that I've hoped to show them throughout a lot of gaming and character creation. And it's really interesting to see that happen when we have characters that are female being played by male players, or we see characters that don't have gender because they're a shape-shifting goblin. Those kind of questions come up. And while it's easy to fall into the same sort of gender stereotypes that we see in our real world, when we're creating a world together, if we bring in those stereotypes, all of a sudden the kids themselves are disenfranchised by them. So we learn that lesson really quickly. And seeing kids then apply that a week or two later to the real world of, right, we don't want to do that because real people will be disenfranchised the way my character was. Seeing them repeat that in the space around me when I'm not there or they don't know someone's listening is really empowering for what my program can.